The daughter is traumatized because the cat was found on the floor, on its back, with its legs in the air. She asks, "Why is she like this?" The quick-thinking father says, It's so that Jesus can come down and carry her up to heaven." The daughter seems to accept this explanation and feels better for it. A few days later, the father comes home from work, and the daughter runs up to him shouting, "Daddy, Daddy, Mommy almost died today." He says, "What? What happened?" Daughter: "She was lying down on the floor with her arms and legs in the air, shouting, 'Jesus, I'm coming!' And if the milkman hadn't been holding her down, she definitely would have gone daddy." One day, two young brothers in Rome, aged 12 and 14, came home with a 20 and 50 euro note. Their mother asked them where they got all that money from. "Well, we were standing outside the brothel when a guy left," said the 12-year-old. "We told him that we knew where he had been, so he asked us not to reveal anything and gave us 20 euros. Then we followed the man," said the other boy, "and when he came to his house, we told him that now we also knew where he lived. Then he gave us another 50 euros and begged us to keep quiet." "That's truly awful behavior," the mother replied. "You really should be ashamed of yourselves and feel sorry for the man. Off you go to confession in the church." The boys did what they were told and went to the church to confess and atone before the priest. After a while, they came back with 100 euros because now they also knew where the man worked. Three sisters die in a car crash. All three sisters make it up to heaven, where they are greeted by God himself. God opens the pearly gates to reveal ducks everywhere. God says, "Welcome to heaven." There is only one rule here. The only thing you cannot do is step on any of the ducks, so you must always watch your step. The sisters are very cautious throughout their first days there. However, the oldest sister accidentally steps on a duck. God then came walking up with this ugly man and handcuffed the man to the oldest sister. God said, "As a punishment for stepping on a duck, you will have to spend the rest of eternity with this man." The other sisters, knowing the punishment, take extra caution over the next couple of days. Unfortunately, the middle sister could not avoid it anymore and accidentally stepped on a duck. Again, God walked up and handcuffed a hideous man to the middle sister for eternity. The youngest sister made sure to always watch her step, and after about a month or so, God came walking up to her with an attractive young man and handcuffed them together. God then started to walk away when the youngest sister stopped him and said, "But God, I did not step on a duck." To which God replied, "Yes, but he did." Once upon a time, there was a kingdom ruled by a kind but aging king. This king had a single daughter, beautiful and clever, but incredibly picky regarding suitors. At first, the king entertained many foreign princes and young nobles, seeking the hand of his daughter in marriage. However, the princess insisted every potential groom be put to a mysterious test of her design, and none of the suitors returned from a walk in the park with her. Gradually, the nobles and princes stopped visiting the castle, and the old king began to despair. Will his daughter ever find someone worthy enough to inherit his kingdom? So he let it be known that anyone, no matter his birth or station, can try his luck. And so it came to pass that peasant John arrived to brave the princess's test. The princess took him for a walk in the castle gardens, passing the time in pleasant conversation, until they came to a pond full of crocodiles. The princess slipped a ring from her slender finger, threw it into the pond, looked at peasant John and said, "Pull it out." Peasant John didn't hesitate and pulled it out, and the princess said, "Finally, all the other idiots jumped into the pond." A husband and wife who work for the circus go to an adoption agency looking to adopt a child, but the social workers there raise doubts about their suitability, so the couple produces photos of their 50-foot motorhome, which is clean and well-maintained and equipped with a beautiful nursery. The social workers are satisfied by this, but then raise concerns about the kind of education a child would receive while in the couple's care. The husband puts their mind at ease, saying, "We've arranged for a full-time tutor who will teach the child all the usual subjects along with French, Mandarin, and computer skills." Next, though, the social workers express concern about a child being raised in a circus environment. This time, the wife explains, "Our nanny is a certified expert in pediatric care, welfare, and diet. The social workers are finally satisfied and ask the couple, "What age child are you hoping to adopt?" The husband says, "It doesn't really matter as long as the kid fits in the canon." A foreigner enters a country and gets a taxi. On his way to the hotel, he points at a tall building and asks the driver, "How long did it take to build that building?" The driver responds, 2 years. 2 years? In my country, it would have taken only 2 months, the foreigner said. After a while, the foreigner again asked, "How long did it take to build that building?" Pointing at a taller building. The driver responds, 3 years. 3 years? In my country, it would have taken only 1 year, the foreigner said. Some more time passes. The foreigner again asked, "How long did it take to build that building?" Pointing at the tallest building. The driver, feeling his country's reputation on the line, said, 1 month. The foreigner, not to be outdone, said 1 month. In my country, it would have taken only 15 days. A few minutes later, they pass by the country's tallest and most famous building. The foreigner naturally asks, "How long did it take to build that building?" The driver sighs and says, "How do I tell you this?" The foreigner looks confused and asks, "Tell me what?" The driver says, "On my way to the airport this morning, there was no building there." My dad sent me this on Facebook, which means it's almost guaranteed to be a repost. I touched it up a bit, but here you go. The worst day ever. There I was, sitting at the bar, staring at my drink, when a large, troublemaking biker steps up next to me, grabs my drink, and gulps it down in one swig. "Well, what you gonna do about it?" he says menacingly. I burst into tears. "This is the worst day of my life," I say. "I'm a complete failure. I was late for a meeting, and my boss fired me. When I went to the parking lot, I found that my car had been stolen and I don't have any insurance. I left my wallet in the cab I took to get home. At home, I found my wife with another man. Then my dog bit me. So I came to this bar to work up the courage to end it all. I bought a drink and dropped a suicide capsule in it. Then, after all that, as I sat down here watching the poison dissolve, you came in here and drank the whole damn thing." A local charity realized that it had never received a donation from the town's most successful lawyer. The volunteer in charge of contributions called him to persuade him to contribute. "Our research shows that out of a yearly income of more than $600,000, you give not a penny to charity. Wouldn't you like to give back to the community in some way?" The lawyer thought about it for a minute and replied, "First, did your research also show that my mother is dying after a long illness and has medical bills that are several times her annual income?" Embarrassed, the volunteer mumbled, No. Second, that my brother, a disabled veteran, is blind and confined to a wheelchair?" The stricken volunteer began to stammer out an apology, but was cut off. "Third, that my sister's husband died in a horrific traffic accident," the lawyer's voice rising in indignation, "leaving her penniless with 3 children." The humiliated volunteer, completely beaten, said simply, "I had no idea." On a roll, the lawyer cut him off once again. "And I don't give them any goddamn money, so why should I give any to you?" An Englishman, an Irishman, and an American are stranded on an island until they find a genie. The genie explains to them that usually he'd give them 3 wishes, but because there are 3 people, and they all found him equally, everyone gets 1 wish. First, the Englishman makes his wish. "Well, I've been stranded on this island for 2 years now, so I wish to go back home to my family in England." The genie grants his wish, and the Englishman disappears with a poof. Now it's time for the American to make his wish. "Well, I've been stranded on this island for 2 years as well, so I wish to go back home to my family in America." And the genie grants his wish, and the American disappears with a poof. Next, the Irishman makes his wish. "Well, I'm really lonely on this island, so I wish my 2 buddies were back here with me." A man wakes up hungover, with no memory of coming home. He realizes he's fully clothed in bed. He sees one of the lamps on a bedside table is broken, and he smells like he was sick on himself. He sits up and sees muddy tracks leading to his bed. The man groans and holds his head, knowing he's going to be in big trouble with his wife. She then enters the bedroom with a glass of water and some aspirin. "Here, sweetie, You probably need this, she says, handing it to him. Sounds like you had a fun night. When you feel like it, I have your favorite breakfast in the kitchen. You can lie back down and I'll bring it to you in bed. I had my mom pick up the kids so you can have some peace and quiet, and after you clean up and feel better, I was thinking we could fool around and I'll do that thing for you that you like. The man is baffled that she is being so nice to him. Suspicious, he asks what happened last night. Around 2 a.m., I was woken up by you trying to unlock the door. I let you in, and you staggered right past me and collapsed in the bed after knocking over the lamp, she says. I was mad, but I figured I should try to undress you. Then you yelled at me. I'm so sorry, honey. What did I say? Get your hands off of me, lady. I'm married. A man takes his wife to the stock show. They start heading down the alley that had the bulls. They came up to the first bull, and his sign stated, "This bull mated 50 times last year." The wife turns to her husband and says, "He mated 50 times in a year. You could learn from him." They proceeded to the next bull, and his sign stated, "This bull mated 65 times last year." The wife turns to her husband and says, "This one mated 65 times last year. That is over 5 times a month. You can learn from this one also." They proceeded to the last bull, and his sign said, "This bull mated 365 times last year." The wife's mouth drops open and says, "Wow, he mated 365 times last year. That is once a day. You could really learn from this one." The man turns to his wife and says, "Go up and see if it was 365 times with the same cow." In a crowded city at a busy bus stop, a woman who was waiting for a bus was wearing a tight leather skirt. As the bus stopped and it was her turn to get on, she became aware that her skirt was too tight to allow her leg to come up to the height of the first step of the bus. Slightly embarrassed and with a quick smile to the bus driver, she reached behind her to unzip her skirt a little, thinking that this would give her enough slack to raise her leg. Again, she tried to make the step only to discover she still couldn't. So a little more embarrassed, she once again reached behind her to unzip her skirt a little more. For the second time, she attempted the step, and once again, much to her chagrin, she could not raise her leg. With a little smile to the driver, she again reached behind to unzip a little more, and again was unable to make the step. About this time, a large Texan who was standing behind her picked her up easily by the waist and placed her gently on the step of the bus. She went ballistic and turned to the would-be Samaritan and screeched, "How dare you touch my body? I don't even know who you are." The Texan smiled and drawled, "Well, ma'am, normally I would agree with you, but after you unzipped my fly 3 times, I kind of figured we are friends." A woman in a hot air balloon realized she was lost. She spotted a man in a boat below and lowered her altitude, then shouted to him, "Excuse me, can you help me? I promised a friend I would meet him an hour ago, but I don't know where I am." The man consulted his portable GPS and replied, "You're in a hot air balloon, approximately 30 feet above a ground elevation of 2346 feet above sea level. You are at 31 degrees, 14.97 minutes north latitude and 100 degrees, 49.09 minutes west longitude." She rolled her eyes and said, "You must be a Republican." "Yes, I am," replied the man. "How did you know?" "Well," answered the balloonist, "everything you told me is technically correct, but I have no idea what to do with your information, and I'm still lost. Frankly, you've not been much help to me." The man smiled and responded, "You must be a Democrat." "I am," replied the balloonist. "How did you know?" "Well," said the man, "you don't know where you are or where you're going. You've risen to where you are due to a large quantity of hot air. You made a promise that you have no idea how to keep, and you expect me to solve your problem. You're in exactly the same position you were before we met. But somehow now it's my fault." Milk, the only cow in a small town in Ireland, stopped giving milk. The town folk found they could buy a cow in Scotland quite cheaply. They brought the cow from Scotland. It was wonderful. It produced lots of milk every day, and everyone was happy. They bought a bull to mate with the cow to get more cows, so they'd never have to worry about their milk supply again. They put the bull in the pasture with the cow, but whenever the bull tried to mount the cow would move away. No matter what approach the bull tried, the cow would move away from the bull, and he was never able to do the deed. The people were very upset and decided to go to the vet, who was very wise, tell him what was happening, and ask his advice. Whenever the bull tries to mount our cow, she moves away. If he approaches from the back, she moves forward. When he approaches her from the front, she backs off. If he attempts from the one side, she walks away to the other side. The vet rubbed his chin thoughtfully and pondered this before asking, "Did you by chance buy this cow in Scotland?" The people were dumbfounded, since no one had ever mentioned that they had brought the cow over from Scotland. "You're truly a wise vet," they said. "How did you know we got the cow from Scotland?" The vet replied with a distant look in his eye, "My wife is from Scotland." One evening, my wife found out I'd been visiting prostitutes, and she was absolutely furious. "How could you do this to me?" she yelled. I shrugged and said, "Well, you can hardly blame me. It's not like I was getting any from you." She glared at me and shouted, "But I didn't know you were willing to pay for it." 3 weddings were occurring at the same hotel one weekend. After the ceremonies and wedding meals, all 3 grooms happened to be at the bar at the same time, and they got talking about how they were looking forward to their wedding nights. The first groom said, "Hey, we should let each other know how we got on. How about, at breakfast, the number of pieces of toast we order is the number of times we, consummated our marriages." The other 2 grooms agreed, and they went on their way, partying until the small hours, whereafter they took their respective brides to their respective rooms for their respective wedding nights. The next morning at breakfast, they all gave each other little smiles until the waiter asked the first groom how many pieces of toast he would like. "Just 3 pieces of toast for me," he announced, and the other 2 grooms gave him appreciative nods. The second groom, when asked by the waiter, said in a slightly louder voice, "I shall have 5, yes 5, pieces of toast, please." And with a big grin, he looked around and saw the other 2 grooms winking and raising their glasses of orange juice in his direction. Finally, the waiter approached the third groom and asked him how many pieces of toast he would like. The man answered, "I will have 7 pieces of toast, please. And can you make 2 of them brown?" A cabbie picks up a nun. She gets into the cab, and the cab driver won't stop staring at her. She asks him why he is staring, and he replies, "I have a question to ask you, but I don't want to offend you." She answers, "My dear son, you cannot offend me. When you're as old as I am and have been a nun as long as I have, you get a chance to see and hear just about everything. I'm sure that there's nothing you could say or ask that I would find offensive." "Well, I've always had a fantasy to have a nun kiss me." She responds, "Well, let's see what we can do about that. First, you have to be single, and second, you must be Catholic." The cab driver is very excited and says, "Yes, I am single, and I'm Catholic too." The nun says, "Okay, pull into the next alley." He does, and the nun fulfills his fantasy. But when they get back on the road, the cab driver starts crying. "My dear child," said the nun, "why are you crying?" "Forgive me, sister, but I have sinned. I lied, I must confess. I'm married and I'm Jewish." The nun says, "That's okay. My name is Kevin and I'm on my way to a Halloween party." An older man is finally able to leave the Soviet Union in the late 1980s for the first time in his life. His wife and son have already left and settled in the States, and he's finally able to go and join them. On his way out through the Soviet border, the guard looks through his luggage and finds a bust of Lenin. "What is this?" he asks. "Don't ask me what this is, ask me who this is. This is Vladimir Lenin, the great hero that fought for the rights of the people in our country, and I'm bringing him with me to remind myself to continue that battle in America." The guard lets him through, and he is able to go on the plane to America. Once he arrives, the American border guard goes through his luggage and finds the bust of Lenin. "What is this?" he asks. "Don't ask me what this is. Ask me who this is. This is Vladimir Lenin, the fiendish monster who destroyed my beautiful homeland. I am bringing him with me to remind myself of the mistakes of the past." The guard lets him through, and he is able to go into the country, where he takes a taxi to the house his wife and son are staying in. After reuniting with them, the son sees the bust of Lenin and asks, "Papa, who is this?" The man smiles and says, "My son, don't ask me who this is. Ask me what this is. This, my son, is 18 pounds of gold." A man driving a Kia stops at a traffic light next to a Rolls-Royce. The Kia driver rolls down his window and calls out to the Rolls-Royce driver, "Hey, pal, that's an impressive car. Does your Rolls have Wi-Fi? My Kia does." The Rolls-Royce driver replies, "Yes, it has Wi-Fi." The Kia driver continues, "Nice! And do you have a fridge in there?" "I have a fridge in the back seat of my Kia." The Rolls-Royce driver, getting irritated, responds, "Yes, there's a refrigerator." Not backing down, the Kia driver asks, "That's cool, man. What about a TV? I've got a TV in my Kia's back seat." The Rolls-Royce driver, increasingly annoyed, says, "Yes, there's a television. A Rolls-Royce is the epitome of luxury vehicles." The Kia driver says, "Amazing car. But do you have a bed in there? I've got a bed in the back of my Kia." Frustrated that his car lacks a bed, the Rolls-Royce driver speeds off. He heads straight to the dealership and orders a bed to be installed in his Rolls. The following morning, he picks up his car, and the bed looks fantastic, complete with silk sheets and elegant brass accents. It's undoubtedly a bed suited for a Rolls-Royce. The Rolls-Royce driver spends the entire day searching for the Kia. Finally, late that night, he spots the Kia parked with fogged-up windows. He gets out of his Rolls-Royce and knocks on the Kia's window. At first, there's no response, but then the owner pokes his head out, dripping wet. "I now have a bed in the back of my Rolls-Royce," the Rolls-Royce driver declares smugly. The Kia driver replies, "Did you really drag me out of the shower just to tell me that?" A Marine pulled into a small town and found that every hotel room was taken. "Please," he begged the manager, "you've got to have something, a bed, a couch, anything." The manager thought for a moment. "Well, I do have a double room with one occupant, a Navy guy. He might be willing to split the cost, but I warn you, he snores so loud that people in adjoining rooms have complained." The Marine waved it off. "No problem, I'll take it." The next morning, the Marine came down to breakfast looking bright-eyed and refreshed. "How'd you sleep?" the manager asked, surprised. "Never better," the Marine grinned. The manager raised an eyebrow. "No problem with the snoring?" "Nope, I shut him up in no time." The manager was curious. "How'd you do that?" The Marine shrugged. "He was already in bed snoring when I walked in. I went over, kissed him on the cheek, and said, 'Good night, beautiful.'" The manager stared in disbelief. "And he stayed up all night watching you?" "Yep," the Marine nodded. "He wasn't going anywhere after that." A woman goes to her boyfriend's parents' house for dinner, nervous about meeting the family for the first time. Everyone sits down to enjoy the meal, and the woman starts to feel a bit uncomfortable from both her nerves and the broccoli casserole. The gas pains are becoming unbearable, and she knows she has no choice but to let out a dainty little fart. It wasn't loud, but everyone at the table heard the soft poof. Before she can even get embarrassed, her boyfriend's father looks at the dog lying at her feet and sternly says, "Skippy!" Relieved, the woman thinks, "This is great," and a smile spreads across her face. A few minutes later, the gas pains return. This time, she doesn't hesitate and lets out a much louder, longer fart. Once again, the father looks at the dog and shouts, "Damn it, Skippy!" Feeling victorious, the woman smiles again, thinking, "Yes." Then a few minutes later, she can't hold it in any longer. She lets out a fart so loud it could rival a train whistle. The father glares at the dog one last time and yells, "Damn it, Skippy, get away from her before she shits on you." You've probably heard of the U.S. Army's best-kept secret, Area 51 in Nevada, where top-secret operations take place. One late afternoon, the Air Force spotted a Cessna landing right at the base. Surprised, they quickly seized the pilot and dragged him into an interrogation room. The pilot nervously explained, "I took off from Vegas, got lost, and spotted the base just as I was about to run out of fuel." The Air Force launched a full FBI background check on him and held him overnight. By morning, they were convinced he was just a lost civilian and not a spy. After refueling his plane and giving him a terrifying "you did not see anything" briefing, complete with threats of life imprisonment, they pointed him in the direction of Vegas and sent him on his way. The very next day, to their utter disbelief, The same Cessna appeared again. This time, though, there were two people on board, and the pilot and an angry-looking woman. The pilot jumped out and said, "I know I shouldn't be here again, and you can do whatever you want to me, but please, will you tell my wife that I really did spend the night in Area 51? A guy decides to host a party where guests are asked to come dressed as different emotions. On the night of the party, the first guest arrives. The host opens the door and sees a man covered in green paint with the letters N and V painted on his chest. "Wow, great outfit. What emotion have you come as?" the host asks. The man replies, "I'm green with envy." The host laughs, "Brilliant. Come on in and have a drink." A few minutes later, the next guest arrives. The host opens the door and sees a woman covered in a pink body stocking with a feather boa wrapped around her most intimate parts. "Wow, great outfit. What emotion have you come as?" the host asks again. She replies, "I'm tickled pink." The host chuckles, "I love it. Come on in and join the party." A couple of minutes later, the doorbell rings again. The host opens the door and is shocked to see two Irish men, Paddy and Mick, standing there stark naked. One has his intimate part in a bowl of custard, and the other has his in a pear. The host, stunned, says, "What on earth are you two doing? You can't be standing like that on the street. And what emotion is this supposed to be?" Paddy looks at the host and says, "Well, I'm fucking disgusted, and Mick here, he's just come in despair." A lady walks into a high-class jewelry shop. She browses around, spots a beautiful diamond bracelet, and walks over to inspect it. As she bends over to look more closely, she inadvertently breaks wind. Very embarrassed, she looks around nervously to see if anyone has noticed her little accident and prays that a salesperson doesn't pop up right now. As she turns around, her worst nightmare materializes in the form of a salesman standing right behind her. Cool as a cucumber and displaying complete professionalism, the salesman greets the lady with, "Good day, madam. How may we help you today?" Very uncomfortably, but hoping that the salesman may just not have been there at the time of her little accident, she asks, "Sir, what is the price of this lovely bracelet?" He answers, "Madam, if you farted just looking at it, you're going to shit yourself when I tell you the price." After 50 years together, Tom and Margaret were celebrating their anniversary with their 3 children, now all grown, successful, and busy with their own lives. To mark the occasion, they had all agreed to a special Sunday dinner in their honor. As the evening began, their eldest son, Michael, rushed in, slightly out of breath. "Happy anniversary, Mom and Dad," he said, giving them both a quick hug. "I'm so sorry I'm late. Had an emergency at work, barely made it in time. Didn't even have a chance to get you a gift." Tom chuckled and patted his son on the back. Don't worry about it, son. The important thing is that we're all together." A few minutes later, their second son, David, arrived. He looked sharp in his tailored suit, a clear sign he had just flown in from Los Angeles. "Mom, Dad, you both look amazing," he said with a smile. "I barely made my flight, and with everything going on, I just didn't have time to get you a present." Tom simply waved it off. "It's nothing, son. We're just happy you're here." Finally, their daughter, Emily, burst through the door. "Happy anniversary, you two!" she exclaimed, dropping her bags on the floor. "My boss is sending me out of town tomorrow, so I was so busy packing that I completely forgot to get you anything." Once again, Tom reassured his children, "It really doesn't matter. The best gift is having the 5 of us together." The meal went on, full of laughter and reminiscing about old times. After dessert, Tom set his fork down, cleared his throat, and looked at his children with a serious expression. "Listen up, kids. There's something your mother and I have been meaning to tell you for a long time," he began. "You see, when we first met, we had nothing. We were dirt poor. But we loved each other, and despite our struggles, we worked hard to raise you 3 and send you to college. Through all the years, your mother and I knew how much we loved each other, but we never actually found the time to get married." A stunned silence fell over the table. The 3 children stared at their parents wide-eyed. "You mean, we're bastards?" Michael finally blurted out. Tom leaned back in his chair, smirked, and took a sip of his wine. "Yep," he said, "and cheap ones, too."